So I'm going to let Annika do the introduction for the B Corp bit, and then I'm going to take over and talk you through the Powerful Communications Masterclass and why we're here today. So people will be joining us, so please just, don't get distracted by people joining in through the chat. But today is all about you, so please get involved. The more you get involved, the more you'll get out of it. Annika, B Corp.
Perfect. Yes, thanks. Hello, everyone. It's very nice to see you all. I'm Annika. I'm the Community and Communications Manager for B Lab Germany. Yeah, and I'm sitting in Berlin. I don't know where you are all based. Could be nice to see in the chat because I heard it's not everyone from Germany, so quite an international group of people here. Yeah, maybe a little bit about what B Corp, B Lab stands for. I don't know how familiar you are with the movement and terms, but just a very, very quick intro. B Lab, if you've known or if you've heard from it, you know it probably from us certifying B corporations or benefit corporations like UniQ, for example. There are around like 6,500 companies around the world that are B certified. But we do much more. We are a global movement, and we have the vision of an inclusive, equitable, and regenerative economy. And what we do is we enable businesses. So we use the power of the businesses to change the system. And yeah, we do that by certifying corporations, of course, but we have also standards, open access tools that companies can use. And we talk to politics, we talk to many stakeholders in the whole economy around the world. And we build a whole community and a movement of those people that are engaged. And we want to share what we're doing. We want to reach as many people in the world to talk about what we have proven is working. It's a different way of doing business that is not only aiming to do profit, but also to consider the people and the planet we touch upon as equal as making profit. So yeah, I'm very happy that we get to host this webinar today. I think it's a very important topic, and it's something that is also part of the movement we're building. It's about collaboration, about sharing our knowledge, about spreading that, getting into conversation. And yes, as Sarah has said already, this month is B Corp month, so we also aim to spread the word around the world about what we're doing and how we go beyond and how the B Corps go beyond. So yeah, I'm very excited. And if you have any questions, I mean, of course, reach out. I can also share some links and my email address. Yeah. And I'll hand back over to you, Sarah.
Yeah, perfect. So this was the aim for B Corp month, that we were going to do lots of lunch and learns. And I actually started the month on the 1st. So it's kind of like now I'm bringing it back and finishing the month with a different topic to actually try and engage people, not only with B Corp movement, but also in actually why is it so important that we create an impact. Everything I do within my business is trying to create an impact, because we're not going to change the world when each of us is sitting in our own little spaces. We need to work together and co-create and collaborate. That was my reason for becoming a B Corp. And the one thing I love, and I will just speak on B Lab Germany's behalf, is I don't think I've ever been part of a community where you go into a group session and you've got such clear common goals at the start. Everyone's got such clear common values that actually you go into really meaningful discussions, which is why obviously this topic's so important, really quickly. You don't need to discuss about some of the other stuff that you may otherwise need to agree on or understand from other people. Everyone who's coming into these meetings is actually at the same point in terms of this is important, this is what we stand for. And so I really feel that in terms of B Corp, and it's the reason I'm part of this community. So going on to today's session, as Annika's just said, she will be keeping an eye on the chat for me. Please ask your questions into the chat. And also, there are not loads of you in, so we had about 40 people sign up. There are 9 in the room right now. So please just, put your hand up, share, ask a question. I'm more than happy that we run this as an open dialogue, because this is the way you will get most out of it. So please get involved. As I said, Annika will be keeping an eye on it so I don't miss stuff. But it's really important that you actually just, as a start, set yourselves an intention. Why is it that you've decided to come here today? Why is it that you want to kind of participate? Why are you giving yourself this time? Annika, can you see the screen?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. So just set your intention. Because you've decided to invest an hour of your time in coming here, in sharing this experience. So what's going to help you get the most out of this session? And a couple of normal things, maybe switch off phone notifications, or maybe just close the other browsers that are opening in your windows. Really focus in as to actually, what do I want to get out of this? So today I'm going to challenge your thoughts on how you communicate, because I have seen so many people who are currently frustrated, and also feeling like there's something happening within their business context, but they either don't know how to call it out in a way they feel comfortable with, or they're worried about triggering other people by actually calling things out. So it takes courage to have a difficult conversation, and it's really important that we do, so that we can challenge the way things are happening in businesses. So for those of you that don't know me, my name's Sarah Needham. I spent 17 years in Rolls-Royce, mostly in leadership positions, and I'm now an executive leadership advisor and coach. I write for Forbes magazine on thought leadership articles such as inclusive leadership and how this relates to the future of our planet. Now you can see this all coming back together in the fact that I'm a B Corp, the fact that I'm talking about sustainability, but sustainability as a whole. Not just about making things greener, it's how we integrate that in our lives and in our businesses. So this session's for you no matter who you are, because you know what, we're all communicating all of the time. And the more effective we can be at having meaningful conversations, the more meaningful our solutions will be in making the world a better place. And this is why this is a B Corp topic, because it helps us to create more impact. So this is why I called it Go Beyond the Blah, Blah, Blah. Because actually, this is what we're seeing too much of in businesses, in politics, in the world today. A lot of people talking on a very superficial level, saying all the right things, putting the money into marketing. But actually, when it comes to action, we're struggling to make change. We're struggling to create impact in the business, in our communities. And so with this being B Corp Month, I wanted you to share the opportunity as to how we go beyond blah, blah, blah. Now, Annika, if you can just share the Google Doc I sent to you earlier. This is a playbook. It's a Google Doc, it's a playbook. Please copy it and then just upload your own version. But you can make notes in this. It's got some of the slides in it, and it will just enable you to take notes more easily as we're going through. So, the most fundamental of human needs is to understand and to be understood. And that's why I want to share with you some really simple tricks to help you be understood and to understand others. And this will also increase your chance of getting something that you think is important bought off by the business, or having a conversation where you can actually really learn what's holding other people back from either agreeing to what you want or sharing and standing up in the way that you want them to in the business. So by the end of this session, you will probably understand why you're struggling right now. You will know how you can try something fundamentally different to get a different result. And if you try this out a few times in your business and it doesn't work, you might actually realize that you're in a business that doesn't value the same things that you do. And so it might be one of those things where actually if you try it a few times, then you really want to consider, am I in the right business? Am I actually able to contribute here in a way that's meaningful? Because what happens when we can't understand? Or we feel like we're not being understood? I think the faces of these people tell you everything. You get frustrated, you switch off, you disconnect, you disengage, because you feel like you're not being heard, because you feel like you can't contribute. So just write yes in the chat for me if you've ever been the one that sat in the room where you feel like, everyone else seems to have already had this conversation and this is just a meeting where everyone's just nodding and agreeing, but am I the only one that has missed the whole discussion? Or you've had people talk over you but you feel like your point's being made, or you feel like your point wasn't heard and then someone else says it and all of a sudden it's amazing. Or you feel like you've tried to do something good for the business and when you go and ask for support or investment, you're just met with a barrage of questions that completely miss the point and frustrate you. Or perhaps you've been in that situation where you're sat in a room and you feel like you can cut the tension with a knife and yet nobody's talking about it. Yeah? I can see lots of yeses or lots of things coming through on the chat. So the nodding is all I need to know. Okay, good. So this was me. This was where I was. I was Sarah Needham, head of programs, or Sarah Needham, sales exec, or blah, blah, blah. I spent more time in my own head than I did in the meeting because I felt that there was something wrong with me. I thought it was just me. I'm the only one that doesn't fit. I'm the only one feeling this discomfort. How come no one is bringing this up? Everyone's skirting around the real topic, but no one's actually talking about it. Or I felt like I was getting so much resistance. When I got to the point where I had tried so many different ways to engage, I started to shut down. I started to share less. I started to try to fit in with what I thought everybody else wanted. And this causes stress. I lost what I stood for or how I could make myself heard. I began to think that my views weren't as important as everyone else's because I spent so much time in my own head. And this caused me stress because I just thought, well, this is what everybody's doing, isn't it? And actually what I realized is, no, it's not. But actually, by not taking a stand, by not having those conversations, I was hurting myself. And I often think of the Katy Perry song, which says, I stood for nothing, so I fell for everything. And I used this last week in a different presentation, and it just kind of resonated again as like, oh my goodness. I used to bite my tongue and hold my breath, scared to rock the boat and make a mess. So I sat quietly, agreed politely. I think there's probably a lot of people here who have done this in their time. I guess that I forgot I had a choice. I let you push me past the breaking point. I stood for nothing, so I fell for everything. That was my first thought. I've fallen for everything. I realized that by not standing for something, I was in effect agreeing with things that I didn't agree with. And I've always got a choice. The second reflection I had was, I'm just not cut out for this. Come on, you've all been there. This was a story going on in my head, just like, oh goodness, it's just me. And you know what? It's not. Because all of us have got everything that's going on outside our lives, and all of it compresses over time. You don't need to add another layer of pressure by not being able to be you in a business. So it's really a difficult balance for most of us to say, okay, so where's the line? How much do I share? But I know at the point I went off with burnout, I couldn't put my finger on what was causing me so much stress. whilst I was off with burnout, my mum died. And I went, oh, I need to take some responsibility for my life. And that was really my wake-up call to say, walk away. It's time to get out. It's time to take a stand for my 2 adopted girls and show them a different role model. Not one who's unhappy in her job, doesn't buy into actually what the company's trying to do, can't live the values that are important to me. I didn't know where I'd end up, but I took a stand for me. However, I realise now that I could have made an awful lot more impact in the business by using a few simple structures that I'm going to share with you today. So I now use my life experience, what I've been through, to help others step into their unique power, to take off like their invisibility cloaks, like so many people wear in businesses today. I help them understand the essence of who they are, then stand strong, guided by their values and playing to their unique strengths. I help them find their leadership, unique selling point. What is it that they contribute that nobody else does? And help them take their stand as a leader. Because we all need to be able to speak about what's important to us. And also listen, to create space to help others speak. And even challenge them, to challenge us. To me, this is the heart of inclusive leadership and what drives innovation, the innovation we so desperately need to make the world a better place. This is a lot of what's missing in big businesses today. So on this journey with my clients, one of 3 things normally happens. They re-engage boldly and increase the positive impact that they have within their business. They find a new role within the business that's more suited to their strengths and culturally aligned to their values. Or they recognize, I'm in completely the wrong place. This business isn't a place where I'm going to be able to thrive, and they step out and they find a new role in a new business, in an area they're passionate by. Now, this to me is important because when we're passionate, when we're driven by the purpose, we are a lot more engaged. And we have got a massive pandemic of wastage of human potential because there's a lack of engagement globally. So again, all of this, as you can see, I'm heading it back to impact. We each have a responsibility to create an impact in the world. I call it to be good ancestors, but actually to take a stand for things. We can't hand everything over that's not working onto the next generation. And our feeling of discomfort, when we're feeling like, oh goodness, do I want to engage in this conversation? That's our feeling actually that yes, we need to engage. So, as I said, many senior leaders are feeling this discomfort right now. It's not just you, it's not just me. We're not taught as children how to have difficult conversations at school without either anger or frustration coming out. Yet, actually, we're creating, when we have a conversation, we're there to derive meaning, to create meaning. So we need to have difficult conversations to be able to create meaning, to be able to make change. This is, as humans, where we bring value. This is where AI is not going to take over jobs, in our very human elements. This is where innovation occurs, through discourse. Now, I used to be scared of difficult conversations, and now I help people have them every day. And I kind of like this, because when we're communicating in a way that others aren't hearing, or we're not being heard, it's like this, your communication's not fitting in. Perhaps your values are not being honoured in the lived culture, as we've discussed. You're not abnormal, but you're trying to potentially squeeze yourself into something that might not be close enough lived to what is important to you. Another way of looking at it is you're communicating on a different wavelength. You know, everyone else is up here, you're down here, or vice versa, it doesn't matter. But unless you're crossing, unless you're understanding each other, having those points where you interact, you can't understand the other person. You can't understand the business even. So by helping other people take off their invisibility cloaks and help them stand for what's important to them, you know what? They all have the same realization. My clients all say that although it feels scary and vulnerable, they get a lot more respect in the business when they start talking about what's important to them, when they take a stand for what's important, because others see it as courage. When we feel uncomfortable, when we feel like, oh, this is difficult, a bit like me when I chose to walk away without having a job, everyone came to me and they were like, wow, that's so courageous. You know what? On the inside, it didn't feel very courageous. I felt awful. I felt like a failure. I didn't know what I was going to do. Everyone else saw it as courage. So vulnerability is courage in disguise. But it's like we've forgotten how to have conversations about what matters in businesses, because we're trying to be nice to people. We're trying to avoid conflict. We're scared of emotions in business and things that aren't logical. And so when people are scared and they don't feel psychologically safe to say what it is they think, they feel, and they believe, they won't engage. It's not just you, it unfortunately is a part of us. It's a systemic issue in businesses today. And this means a lot of what's being discussed in businesses is actually, excuse my language, workplace bullshit. So actually there are a number of studies on this. There are a number of studies on what workplace bullshit is actually doing. And the definition is when colleagues make statements at work with no regard for the truth. There's a whole study on this, in fact, numerous ones. This is where you get bluster. It's talking for talking's sake. It's not adding value to the business. It's a lot of marketing and not a lot of action. And unfortunately, we're seeing this in various areas of our society and in businesses. For example, one that I'm always talking about is DEI. You know, the stats are clear. The more diverse our teams are, the more innovative we are, the more ideas we have, the more engaged the teams are. And yes, it can be difficult. But you know what? The rate of change is tiny. But look at all the words that come out on International Women's Day or all these different days, awareness days that we have, where everyone's praising one another. We need to cut through this. We need to take action. And so we need to give everyone the tools to have more meaningful conversations. This is how we can add value to the business and create impact. So the antidote to workplace bullshit is actually helping individuals shine because they're different. This is the heart of inclusive leadership. We need each of us to be able to say what we think and help others hear us and help others hear other people's voices. You see, this is the beauty of diversity. And I love this picture because to me it is probably a bit mad with the backgrounds that both Annika and I have and this picture. But the whole point is we stand out of a crowd by being different. What makes us different is what makes us unique is our superpower. And if we try to find a way to do, like I said, to have these conversations and it doesn't work, if we can't find a way to make ourselves feel comfortable in our business or in our current role, we have to give ourselves the opportunity to step out, because otherwise we'll wither and die. And that might not be literal, but actually, you know, this is the whole point of disengagement. So my first point is, please stop trying to fit in. And I know this is uncomfortable. And I know as a woman who was often in a man's world, it doesn't always go down well. There's a very fine line that anybody who's in an underrepresented group has to tread. And to create messaging that is clear and to the point really does make a difference. So instead of trying to fit in, I want you to try a few simple tricks to help you understand and to help others understand you. You see, there are so many barriers in the way of communication. It's one of the most complex things that's out there, and yet we do it all the time. We pay so little attention to it. So let's just break this down. What's going on in my head versus what's coming out my mouth is different. It's never the same. What goes into somebody's ear and what they finish that story as, which is why you've got the circles here, is different. There's a few reasons for this. Firstly, not everyone's focused on what you're saying. You know, people are maybe in the last meeting they just had, or they're worrying about what their partner's going to do because they had an argument before they left the house this morning, or whatever that is. We need to help them focus into the room. A bit like we did at the start of this. What's your intention? Why are you here? Focus. It helps our brains to focus. And if you don't say the intention out loud as to what you're trying to achieve and why you're together, someone else will set the intention based on the story that they're telling themselves in their head. And it's not going to be right. So you might as well help them by setting the intention and giving them the opportunity to hear what it is that you've got to say. And like I said, if you don't complete the story for somebody else, if blanks, their brain will complete the story, because our brains are wired to complete stories, because then we get dopamine. It doesn't matter whether the answer is right or wrong. It doesn't matter whether the ending of the story is real. We layer on our beliefs, our values, what we've seen about this person before, what we had for breakfast, anything. So just be aware. If we're missing information, if we don't help people complete the story, then the brain will do it. And it's completely unintentional. So curiosity is the antidote for this. But generally, as you've probably found before, you're wrapped up in your own head. So people struggle to stay curious. So we need to help them and create the framework for it. And creating the framework is really important. Frame every conversation. And people go, oh my goodness, this is so hard. It's not, it's just getting into the habit of doing it. If a conversation is important enough to have, it's important enough to spend 30 seconds in your brain thinking, what's my intention for this? Why is this important to me? And maybe to the business, but why is it important to me primarily? What is it that I want to be honored during this discussion? And you can always use your business values. Every company has got great business values nowadays. So use them. It might be honesty, it might be openness, it might be clarity or transparency, or whatever that word is. Then talk about all these things. Set the intention out loud. Tell the other person why this is important to you and why it's important to the business. Tell them what's important for you to be in the conversation, what you need to be honored. And then ask what the other person needs. We still need to listen to the other person's needs. And generally, when you ask somebody like this, the first question, the first instant, if they've not heard it before, they're going to be like, no, that's fine. But the whole point is to give them the chance to contribute. So all of this is around framing conversation. Everyone says, well, why is this important? So let me give you an idea. Let's say you're going into having a meeting with one of your direct reports. You want to give them some feedback, but you have a coffee together, and then on the end, in the last 2 minutes, you slip in a discussion to say, oh, and I've just had this bit of feedback, just want to kind of add this in. The other person goes, what? Why, you've confused me. Whereas if you start the coffee conversation, still have your coffee conversation, but start to say, look, my intention for this session is to just have a coffee with you, but I also want to give you a bit of feedback that I've heard. I think it's important because it's a different conversation. The other person can hear what you're about to tell them. They understand it's important and you're not just slipping it in at the end of the conversation. Another example, that's a typical one for us. When I need to vent, when something gets a bit frustrating, sometimes I go to my husband and I'm like, rah, and I'm just talking and talking and talking. If I don't tell him I just want him to listen, his natural reaction is to start coming up with solutions. He jumps in and he starts giving me ways to solve my problem. I'm like, I don't want your help in solving my problem. I just want you to listen. I didn't tell him. How is he supposed to know? You know, it happens in all walks of life. Does that make sense? Okay. The other thing not to forget, and again, it's a really big thing relating back to impact, connect your message to a bigger purpose. Make it bigger than just about yourself. Why is this important? What's the impact this could have on me, on my team, on the business, on, you know, even future generations? Because it helps us get the confidence to speak up when it's something bigger than just ourselves. And actually, those are the things where we actually feel like we're really contributing. So you get like a double whammy effect. You feel good after it as well. So the second thing, own what you say. The amount of times I hear people saying, we should do this. We think this. I need to, I must do, I ought to. All of these sayings take your power away, your human power, to make a decision. When you say, I should, it's like someone else is forcing you to do something. And I know this is difficult because it makes us feel vulnerable. People can see more about us. I think, I feel, I need, I believe. They're all starters of sentences which say something about you. Now, we're brought up generally not to boast about who we are, not to say, I want, I want, I want. And yet, this is really important. When you say, I should, let's give myself an example, I should cycle my kids to school, or I have to cycle my kids to school. Actually, why? Actually, I want to cycle my kids to school because they're still very young and I want to ensure they get there safely. Not only is the internal talk difference when you say I want, but also people understand why this is important. So the we discussion. So many people speak from the third party. In German, it's man, or when you speak from we, if you're going to use we in a sentence, we think, that could be me and my dog, that could be me and my husband, that could be me and my kids, that could be me and the universe. If you're going to use we, clarify. So for example, in a sales discussion, you would say we as in the business. So I would say we unique you. And then stick to that clarification of we. But really only use it in those kind of situations where you're talking on behalf of the business to someone external, for example. When you say we as a leader and you're talking to your team, they're confused. Because they don't know whether you're talking on behalf of you and the business, you and your leader, you and who knows. So use I. As often as you can, use I. And again, it is not something that many people are designed to do, and I hear it all of the time. But let's remove the confusion and help other people understand us. Now, the third and final one, which I want to just throw in here, if you're going to present a proposal for, let's just take a classic example I hear all the time, ERG, so employee resource groups. Employee resource group goes to the board and says, I need this much money for completing this, these, and these. And they stand there and they get a barrage of questions. And they're kind of left thinking, oh God, what just happened? What I want you to try instead of this is take a deep breath at this point and actually start asking questions. Because this helps others, the people who are actually you're asking for permission from, to derive their own value from what you've shared. Who better to persuade them that this is a great idea than themselves? The questions that will help you are obviously open questions, coaching questions, but it's like, how does what I just shared with you help us achieve our business goals? Tie it to a goal. How does this create value for the business? Tie it to value creation. How does my proposal honor our business values? All of these are things that are freely available on the internet, but usually vision, goals, vision and values. Use your business values and your business vision to help your board or whoever you're talking to understand the value of what you're trying to do. And then let them ask you any questions they want. So what you're trying to do is derive meaning for them. Help them on this journey. When you sense resistance in the room, or you sense there's an elephant in the room, everyone's avoiding it, deepen the conversation. Search for meaning. Now, typical examples. I sense there's some discomfort in the room. What's going on? Open, non-judgmental, curious. I sense you're frustrated. What's here for you? Or you've asked that question 3 times and the answers I'm giving obviously are not sufficient. I'm curious, why is this important? Make it personal. We derive meaning firstly on an individual basis before we can even do group meaning making. So bring in your emotional intelligence. I often say this is like the hidden superpower in businesses. Give it permission to be valid by making it open and direct, honest and curious. Now, a lot of people struggle with emotional intelligence in business. Like I said, businesses are scared of emotions, unless it's anger, generally. That's one that's often accepted. But think of it like this. Emotion is energy in motion. Emotion shows that somebody cares. You know what? We need more people who care. So let's try and understand the meaning of it rather than shying away from it. We need to let emotions be seen in the workplace, be heard, translate it into meaning. The emotion can be just as important as any discussion, because you know what? We make decisions through an emotional basis. The facts only play a very small part. And yet people are scared because it's difficult to decipher. People are scared to ask questions because they're scared of getting an emotional reaction or something escalating. Curiosity is the antidote to all of this. However, avoid judgment, blame, and the need to be right. When you get drawn into a reactive mode, you've lost your curiosity. So say things because you're curious, because you want to understand what, your emotional intelligence is telling you. Just watch what happens to the energy in the room when you do this. Because I've seen it happen. People are A, shocked, they're not used to hearing emotions being brought into the room, but B, it stops people. people take a breath because they're so unused to it happening that actually you've created a point to change direction. Now, the other thing to be aware of is you don't know what's going on behind somebody else's eyes. And this is a very complex diagram to basically show that there is so much that goes on beneath the water level that you will not see. And if you're dealing, especially in a bigger group, you can't see. So for example, when I was going through multiple miscarriage, I think most people in the business had no clue as to what was going on because I hid it. So just be aware there's always all of this that's going on beneath the surface. You don't know what's happening to somebody else. It's more likely if somebody reacts badly to you, it's nothing about you and all about them. However, this can be really difficult in business situations. So I'm not trying to make it easy. But it is really important to just understand we have one mouth and two ears. So whenever you're talking, create the space to also listen. Because we can't always be right. We can't always have all the information. And by giving people permission to challenge us, to have those difficult conversations, we're role modeling to the rest of the organization. That's what we want to see from them. So quite often when people feel uncomfortable, they shy away. But I'm asking you, if you sense something, then I challenge you to call it. Because you're sensing it for a reason. And it is possible that no one else in the room is sensing it. And I speak to so many people who are just tired of saying, but why is it always me? Some people feel like their emotional intelligence or their sensing is almost like a burden. Let's reframe it as a gift. Your gift to the world. So where could you try this out? Just make a couple of notes. In what situations might this be useful for you? You can write it in the chat or just make note for yourself. But the other thing I always ask people to do at this point, make a commitment to yourself. What's your commitment to you to speak up boldly about what's important? You can't take on everything, and there are some things you do need to let go. To use your human power to decide, from speaking from I, how much you can contribute to a conversation. How can you show up as a leader in important conversations using the tools that I've given you? Because you can choose to stay in the frustration, or you can choose to actually try and make a change. And you know what? You might be able to nudge the system. You might be able to create the change that you actually want to see in the business if you try. So my invite to all of you is to try something a bit different. Now, I do programs. This is what I do. I've got programs where I've created on it. So I was just saying to Annika before I came in that this is part of what we do as B Corp. We're always challenging ourselves to go to the next level. So I'm trying to take a part of like the things that I create in my programs and make it more available. So I've taken this one, which you can see, which is obviously the basis of what we've discussed today. And if you feel like this is an area where you need more support, then you can get the full script of how to have these conversations. It's all in this module. And it's called Speak Clearly, Listen Curiously. And it is a bit of a trial because I've never released content in this way on my platform before. So I'm kind of just putting it out there, and then I'm adding into it something which I often send to clients at the point where they say, oh, I'm going to go and ask the business to invest in me. And for a lot of people, going and asking this question to have an investment in themselves is quite difficult. And so I created this kind of pack, which is around getting input, preparing yourself, having the conversation, and then reflecting back as to what it is. So if that's going to be useful for you, you can use the QR code and sign up for that. And I really do want feedback. So it is useful to have in these sessions, because that will give me the impact as to actually, should I continue to do this as part of my B Corp, making my content more available? Please let me know. But finally, I want to know, what are you taking away? What questions do you have? What examples have you had where you go, oh goodness, I'm not sure that would work? So it's time for you to speak up. Who would like to share? Who would like to ask a question? Who would like to type something into the chat?
I would like to share something.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too, Sarah. Thank you for this masterclass. That was very insightful. Thank you so much for all your input. I really enjoy all your classes and the vibe for this. So thank you very much. My main takeaway today was basically, you mentioned put the emotion into the business. And I think this is something a lot of people struggle with, especially women. When I look around, we have a lot of female participants in this masterclass today. So I guess some of the women may be on the same page as I am. As soon as you put emotion into business, you're rather associated with rather negative connotations to emotions. But I really like your idea or your proposition to really ask those questions and be like very like confront people with it and be like, I feel like you need more information. You ask the questions 3 times. What is there you need to understand it? How can I help? And this is something I think I already have like 2 or 3 situations in my mind where I could use this, and I'd happily try this in my next meeting with my project group.
Cool. Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head, Svantje. It's that, what if I say something now, am I going to say the wrong thing and escalate something? And again, like I said, as long as you're staying away from judgment and you're asking it from that place of curiosity, generally it helps people think. And there's nothing more valuable to people than actually giving them space to think. I mean, this is what people pay me for at the end of the day. I give them space to think. I give them permission to think and unpick what's going on in their brains. And it's something that we don't give ourselves permission to do enough. And sometimes just somebody else calling it out, it can be really useful to help that reflection point. Because we make meaning by reflecting back on what's happened. We make meaning from it, and then we can use that to obviously like point forward, to take further action. So it's like course correct, take action. But we don't give ourselves, most of us are high achievers, we don't give ourselves permission to reflect because it's actually doing nothing. Tanya says, helpful to have the reminder of the language to use to be more certain and clear your own belief in what you are saying. Yes, thank you, Tanya. Do you want to say anything else, or are you happy not speaking? Oh, we can't hear you. Okay. No, afraid not. Oh, that's a shame. While you're sorting it, I'll come on to Jane. Jane, you wrote stating your intention and why you think it's important, a great starting point. What's your reflection?
So we have some very difficult colleagues, some very difficult stakeholders who have very much their agenda in play. And I think when I start the conversations with them. Clearly they're in their space, and I think it's really important for them to understand that intention up front, and actually that the intention is usually in their favor, but they're not hearing it because of where they're starting from. And I think that's a very, very useful place to begin, which we don't traditionally do. Certainly none of my colleagues seem to do it themselves, and I think it might be a useful thing for myself, but also to encourage others to do as well. And also, I think you talk about the bigger purpose. And again, a lot of us are, certainly in our business, heading in the same direction ultimately. You know, our members are the most important thing. You know, we want to be sustainable, all of those things. And tying everything to that vision, that corporate plan, those objectives, outcomes that we're looking for as part of the story is critical. And that was a useful reminder.
Yeah, I like that.
We don't do it, but it's just a useful reminder to do.
Yeah, and obviously this comes into setting the intention. The other thing you can do, which is the other side of the intention setting, is when somebody else doesn't set an intention, remind them. So kind of just clarify the intention of what we're doing right now. Because, and it might be that you're halfway through something and then you think, oh goodness, but we all seem to be going off like this. What's the intention? Actually, it's a way just to bring people back in to say, can we just re-clarify what's the intention of what we're doing right now? And it also gives you the point that if somebody's going off a complete tangent, you can then say, right, I know that's important, but actually the intention of this session is to do this. So let's take that as an action and move on. Because quite often this is what happens when you bring lots of different people together. All the agendas come to play and you end up all over the place. Good. Anyone else? What are you taking away? What would you like to share? Tanya, can you speak to us yet?
Hopefully. Can you hear me now? Thank you. The joys of technology when you change from one platform to the other, all the settings. But just to answer your question, happy to speak on it. I just wanted to get the thoughts down while we had other speaking before I forgot. And I completely agree with what Jane has said. And also just the point on having those business proposal conversations and really hitting home and connecting that with the business. I mean, that's what we talk about, especially when we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. How do we make sure that the business case is there for them to understand, to invest? But it doesn't need to just be about diversity, equity, and inclusion, that kind of topic. It's got to be with everything. And I consider myself to be quite a passionate person, especially if I'm completely invested in something, but it's making sure that the message is clear and I'm not losing myself in the conversation with them, showing my passion, not getting to the point, wishy-washy, so being more direct, asking these questions and answering them specifically rather than letting myself go off on a tangent. So these are very important and very helpful. Thank you.
Good, yeah. I mean, asking always the business values are a great starting point. Businesses have invested so much time and energy in creating great business values in the last 10 to 15 years. And yet what you see is so many businesses that aren't using them. They're not honoring them in how they interact with their people. They're not honoring them in how they're making decisions in the business. The more we can help people bring them back to, you know, for example, they're making a decision. How does that decision you're about to make honor our business values? Which of them does it live? Which of them maybe are we going to dishonor? Are we okay with that? Again, it's all about meaning making. It's bringing them back into the center. And some people say to me, that's not my job. I'm like, well, actually, if you're not asking it, who is asking? If you see it, let's call it. So Ebony, I can see you there. Have you got anything to add? No. You're listening in. Okay. I'll challenge you to a dog walk tomorrow and you can tell me about it. Ebony lives across the street from me. Athena, anything from your side?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I also really, I think the part regarding setting the intention really resonated with me as well. I think especially that I work in the data field so often. I mean, I'm kind of the gatekeeper to I think people's requests for a lot of my team. So if I say, you know, I think oftentimes if I say no, I can't do this for XYZ reason, it can be perceived as a bit adversarial. So I think in helping people explain, like, I'm not going to do this because, I mean, this doesn't make sense, this is a better reason, or like this isn't really going to help you, you know, like justify kind of your business case. let me help you think of a way of doing it better. I think will, I think make those conversations a bit less confrontational. I think help you better understand, like, like this is my intention is not because I don't want to do the work or, because I don't like you. It's rather because it's, I want to help you find the best way of, designing a metric for you that is going to help you. So, making it more about like, I'm coming from like a good place when I kind of, say X, Y, Z, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so setting the intention that actually being clear as to what you want to deliver rather than just the tactical, like short-term steps. What's the bigger goal?
Exactly.
Cool, thank you. Rachel, or Ebony, yeah.
So I really appreciated the discussion on taking a stand. And I think for me, it is how to articulate in the moment when you are feeling, very large emotions. And most of the time, I'm the only one feeling those emotions in the room. And how to bring the point across. Why does it matter, right? Why, and what is okay. So there have been several times in my career where, for example, I have been yelled at by a man in a confined space when I was a junior professional, also as a much more senior professional. And in all instances, I have been silent, only to beat myself up about it later. Right. And so I think, that having the language in advance, not necessarily to expect to be yelled at work, but to at least have the language is useful. Yeah,
that's a great one. And actually, I almost felt like I prepared you for this one. So one of the things, and this is a classic that happens at work, is there's one emotion that's okay, and that's anger, that's frustration, and it comes out. The one thing I always say to people, the language to use, and obviously you need to train yourself on this because it is emotional at the time. And I know, Ebony, you've done an awful lot of work on this one, is it's okay. It's okay to be, upset. It's okay to be angry. It is not okay to shout at me. So actually on certain things, drawing a really strong line to say, this is okay. I'm all right that you're getting emotional about it because, as I said, that means you care. I am not okay that you're shouting at me. That is not acceptable. Sometimes people need to be called out on it, and sometimes it just doesn't work. So it's about, trying it out a few times, and also, if necessary, trying this stuff out in the mirror. So you've got the wording. So when it does happen, it's not like I'm being confronted, especially if you're in an environment where it's likely to happen. But, having the it's okay that, it's not okay that, makes it, or takes the emotion out of it. And people will usually at that point take a step back. And I mean, I've had the most stupid thing happen, which is, and we're going to run over slightly, when I was going through multiple miscarriage, I had one of the bosses who I was going to have a discussion around a new job. And this guy basically said to me, well, are you running away from something? You're also going to run away from my department when it gets hard, Sarah. And I couldn't control it. I actually ended up crying because I was just like, you know what? You have no idea what I'm going through right now. And I started crying. This guy just went, oh crap, I've done it again. I keep being told off for this. I didn't mean to upset you, but I've just gone too far. So he knew, and actually the fact that I did have a very emotional reaction, which I always avoided as best I could at work, actually woke him up, and he became one of my biggest advocates. So it is a very difficult balance, and I know you struggle with this, like especially in the German culture, as what you're currently living in. But all of us do. And I don't think it's just women, but it's obviously anyone who's in what you would call an underrepresented group. We get this. We're more likely to see this in our day-to-day, and we're more likely to be judged or labeled when we're not. And this is why having the wording that's non-judgmental but is strong enables us to take a stand and not back down. Great question, like it. So any final questions before we wrap up? I saw I've not got to everybody. Rachel, I've not had a chance to actually. There are a few people who are off camera, which I'm assuming means they don't want to talk, but that's an assumption. Anyone that does want to say anything else before we wrap? Okay, well, I really hope that's been useful for everybody. It's nice to see so many people. It's nice to have so many people engaged, so thank you. Annika, anything that you want to say and wrap up in behalf of B Corp?
No, I mean, just to end, I wanted to say a big thank you to this great session. I also took a lot of notes and a lot of things I take from it. So thank you so much for doing this. And yeah, I mean, I think if any other questions come up, maybe in the aftermath, they have your contact details, right? And yeah, please, everyone feel free to reach out to both of us, but more topic related to you, Sarah.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Pedro, for your comment. The minority man here, thank you. And Ross is here with you, don't worry. Cool. Thank you all very much and have a lovely afternoon. Take care.